When you have great operations, then marketing's the best thing in the world. But when you have broken operations, all it does is exaggerates the problems that you already have.
So if I'm hearing what you're saying, it almost sounds like if you're interested in enhancing your marketing activities, perhaps a first step is to evaluate your current operations to almost assess whether you're a good candidate. And as a business owner, will this investment of funds in marketing operations or marketing activities be fruitful based on our operations, or do we need to start? Do we need to get the engine fixed first before we take it out to learn how to drive the course?
If you're comfortable, you're not growing. Welcome to another episode of Dental Marketing Theory. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I am the CEO of SMC National. We help dental offices like yours have predictable new patient flow so you can grow the way that you want to. And today, I get to talk to my friend Brett Miller. I actually met him recently at an event that they were hosting through CI Private Wealth. And I flew out to Charlotte and we got to talking, and he has some amazing things that he's doing for his dental clients. He works for a dentist all over the country. And I started to ask him, what makes you different? Why do you approach it this way rather than that way? And so I said, man, I got to get you on a podcast, talk through this. And today's going to be a unique one because Brett said, Gary, I got some questions for you. And he had several things that he wanted to talk through. And normally I don't promote myself on this show, but today we're going to talk through a couple things that he was interested in, that he thought his community would want to know about. So we'll jump into that. But Brett, why don't you do a quick introduction of yourself? Tell us a little bit about your company and how you got in the industry.
Yeah, thanks, Gary, and certainly appreciate you having me on the podcast. So as Gary mentioned a little earlier, Brett Miller, I'm for those of you that can see the video, I always like to say I've been involved in dentistry for 37 years, which ironically is how old I am. So I've had the pleasure of actually growing up in a dental family. Grandfather, uncle, brother, all GPs, have practiced in the North Carolina area, except my brother, who on a wild tangent decided he wanted to explore the West and spent the better part of 10 years practicing dentistry in Alaska, which is a great story for another day. But interestingly enough, growing up, and if you probably look at my college application, it would have said, pre-med, biology, chemistry as my indicated field of study. And probably about halfway through freshman year, like many sons and daughters of clinicians, you go, this isn't right for me. And so I defaulted to probably what is my other love, which was math and business. And so ended up majoring in accounting and was headed down the path. If you remember post Enron in the mid 2000s, everyone was focused on Sarbanes-Oxley, which is a technical term, but was focused on internal accounting, and was planning to go work for Ernst & Young. Had just completed a summer internship, and you know how that summer internship works halfway between your junior and senior year. They'd say, hey, we'd like to bring you in and offer you a job for next year, and actually accepted it. But along the way, I actually ended up meeting one of my former Boy Scout Scoutmasters, who, I was a rising senior at the Citadel. His son was an incoming freshman, and the Citadel is a little bit of a different educational experience when you drop your son or daughter off for the first day of college. It's intentionally designed to probably some good marketing cues there, but it's intentionally designed to create a different experience, right? And so, I walked over to Robert's parents and said, hey, it'll be all right, from the same hometown. I'll plan to keep an eye on Robert. And his dad, Bob, said, hey, Brett, what are you planning to do after college? And, I shared, hey, I'm excited. Just signed, the paperwork to go work for Ernst & Young. He said, wow, that's fascinating. I did that when I graduated from undergrad, but, got something that might be a little more interesting for you. Would you be interested? And I said, sure. I said, well, I actually had a curiosity. What do you do? And he said, well, we have a financial advisory firm. I said, oh, that's interesting. He goes, but we got this new thing. We work exclusively with dentists. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And all of a sudden I started to go, wait a minute, I grew up in dentistry. You guys focus exclusively on dental. And at the time I said, hey, how big is your firm? He said, well, there's 3 of us right now. We're looking for employee number 4. We work with about, we're approaching 100 clients and about $150 million in assets under management. And he said, this is a real startup opportunity. He said, I don't know what the future holds, but this is a great opportunity if you're interested. And I can say, Gary, 15 and a half years later, I'm one of the luckiest people in the world that I said yes to a startup, because now at least our dental team has grown from, we'll call it 4 to approximately 35. We have the pleasure of serving right at 1,000 dental business owners across the United States. We're in 48 states. And at present, we manage right around, markets have been a little bit volatile this year, so that number has moved, but we'll call it approximately $2 billion in assets under management. So honored that we have this incredible dental team, and creates the opportunities to run into great folks like you and kind of learn a little bit more and share some of the knowledge and wisdom across the dental world. Is actually a very small place, which is ironic.
Yeah. Yeah. So what makes you guys different? Because the thing that I noticed that made you different when I was talking to you is you're not just a money guy, right? So usually when you talk to money guys, they just want to talk about money. And so it's just like, hey, what do you want? You want to invest, or how many people can invest? But you were very interested in like the patient journey and the life cycle of dentists and where they're at in their journey and how they're buying practices or selling practices. So that's the thing that I noticed right away, that, okay, this is different. And you're even holding conferences around this kind of stuff. So what from your perspective, what makes you guys different?
Yeah, great question. I always love when folks say, oh, I work with dental or I work with medical, and you look on their website and it splashes and you go, well, is that because you have 3 or 4 dental clients and now all of a sudden you market to dental, or is that because it's what you really do? And I would say, Gary, what makes us different is we have engineered a team. We've dedicated, and we've spent time mapping the client journey. We've spent time investing in what are those critical decision points and what are those critical success factors for a dental small business owner. And really, we've built an investment team and investment offering that focuses on that life cycle of a dental business owner. So you think about it, we are interested in the business operations. We're not experts in any one area of the business operations, but we're using our time with our clients to understand what's going on, to share common threads across these hundreds of different conversations. Because from our standpoint, the financial advisory aspect is kind of the outcome. It's not necessarily the primary focus. The primary focus is, where is a dental business owner optimizing their dental practice, which when done well should drive, if you think about it, the economics to be invested and to plan for the future and their goals and outcomes. But also along the way, and this is, I think this is a conversation you and I were catching up on that I think perked both of our interests, is it's also, where is that person along that journey? And, there's just so much at play here. And if I'm looking forward the next 5 to 10 years, I think our industry, the financial services industry, is in a bit of a metamorphosis. And you're seeing the integration of way more than the technical financial advice. It's the who side of the picture. It's the, what are your goals? What are you struggling with? Where are you headed? For me personally, where are you as an entrepreneurial leader? And
yeah,
they don't teach leadership in dental school. They don't teach business management. And unfortunately, most people are left to figure it out themselves. And they're just, I'm desperate for it too. Where are we just having that conversation and saying, how are we growing and learning together to create a better experience for the patients, the community, your family?
Yeah.
And therein, you can enjoy your dental career, your marketing career, your financial services career more.
Yeah. It's fascinating because you can't, there is no cookie cutter. And that's how I think a lot of the financial markets have been for a long time is, here's a cookie cutter thing, do this, put away 10 here, put away 12 here, and you'll have this much money when you retire, right? And now it's so much different because I just got done doing a podcast with an associate dentist who's starting his own consulting firm, or he's already doing it. He has a consulting firm to help dentists sell more Invisalign cases. But he doesn't want to own a practice. He's like, I'm an entrepreneur. I am an entrepreneur, but I don't want to sell anymore. I don't want to open a dental practice. I want to do something that supports dentists in a different way. And then you have somebody who owns 2 or 3 practices who are literally risking everything they have, personally to start more businesses. And that's, I mean, they might have a good life and make good money, but they literally are putting it all on the line to ensure the growth. And then you have somebody who has already built the enterprise and they got 10 or 20 practices and they're in a totally different place, and they have to now figure out how to protect their wealth rather than the people before. So it is a fascinating time, because when you just say dentist, it doesn't really mean anything anymore. You have to say, what kind of dentist? Where are they at in that life cycle?
I'm going to be the first to always admit a vulnerability. We kind of got caught. We were caught flat-footed a few years ago, where we kind of realized, hey, we've got one thing. We're targeting, to your point, we had a bit of a cookie cutter approach. And I think what we took a step back and we said, dentistry is evolving. Like as an example, my brother was never a dental practice owner. He very successfully worked for the federal government. Actually, he worked for the Indian Health Service.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
Had a compassionate side to his work, but did that make his planning needs any less significant or different than my uncle or grandfather who were small business owners? Different.
Yeah, different. Yeah.
Not more or less important. And so,
yeah.
I think part of this is the evolving nature of questions. And instead of starting with, the outcome, a lot of it's, what are you interested in and what path are you looking to take? Mm-hmm. Because whereas traditionally, I think there was a fairly prescripted path to success in dentistry. Get out of school, work for a few years, you hang a shingle or you buy a practice, put your head down, you work, you save hard for 30 years.
And then you retire.
40 years, whatever.
Yeah.
You sell it and you retire.
Yeah. Oh, that was kind of the American dream. I was watching a video yesterday. They were talking about the American dream is dead. And they said, let me define that. And they went through and they said, if you think that you're going to go get a job, work there for 30 years, have a retirement plan, that retirement plan, you're done, you retire. And then from 60 to 75, you get the last 15 years. That's gone. Like that doesn't exist, or it's very, very rare to find. But there are a lot of new kinds of dreams, right? There's that entrepreneurial spirit is definitely alive and well.
And how many folks worked along the original mandate because that's what they thought they were supposed to do, right?
Yep.
They said, well, that's the predefined success formula.
Yeah.
So if I want to be successful, and I think what you've seen, at least from my perspective, is, and this is not exclusive to dentistry, I think it's really much more broad. There are now multiple paths to success. There are multiple paths to entrepreneurship. And part of this is having an evolving, and this is part of it too. Planning for the future is not a static one-time event. Mm. It is an ongoing evolutionary event.
Yeah.
And back to your original question, what are we doing differently? It's we're trying to sit down with entrepreneurs and small business owners and say, where are you today? Where are you headed? And what decisions do you need help making along the way to help you move towards your goals, while also looking out into the future to make sure that we're trending the right direction.
Yeah.
And
so
then
how do you
constantly evaluating that?
So how do you work with people, like from the perspective, if they don't work with, or let me ask you a question first. Do most dentists right now, are they working with somebody like you guys already, or are they not? Like, or is it like a 50-50? Like, how many people are actually working with somebody like your guys' company?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say across the industry, it's probably 50-50. I think there's a fair amount of folks doing it themselves. And then I think there's a fair amount of folks who've delegated or engaged with an advisory team to help them.
Okay, two questions. So the people that are doing it themselves, how do they know if they're on the right track or not? What advice would you give to them? So let me phrase this up. Let me rephrase this. So for the people who are out there that are managing their own money, they're running a business, they're growing their practices, but they don't have somebody who's managing their wealth for them. How do they know if they're on the right track or not?
I'll use a scorecard analogy. right? One of the best pieces of advice I was given actually by a good friend of mine was, and I'm glad I started an Excel spreadsheet. This still sits in Excel, even though most things are out of Excel. And I have a tab starting in 2007 when I graduated from college, where I do a net worth statement every January 1st. It's like my New Year cup of coffee. It's fairly simple. It's not intended to be overly robust, but it's assets, liabilities, net worth. First thing you got to do is you got to keep stock of where you're at. And I would encourage, regardless of whether you're working with an advisor or not, you need to know where you stand and basically be tracking that change in net worth year over year, right? That would be one thing I would suggest. Two, which is a little bit more difficult to probably conceptualize, but it's what does that future target look like? And thankfully, there is a fairly easy calculation that probably ballparks this. I wouldn't ever base one's decision to retire based off of a ballpark calculation. But one of the most common questions I always get is, how do I know if I have enough? How do I know if I have enough? And so the first thing you actually have to do is say, well, what do you need by virtue of what are the lifestyle expenses that you're comfortable with today? Paying the bills, having a car, travel, spending time with family, putting food on the table. Like, what are your base household expenses? And then you also have to think in what are those future expenses that you may not have on the radar today, but putting kids through school. We were just talking earlier about, upcoming holiday plans, putting kids through school, going on family trips, weddings, things of that nature. So once you figure out, if you will, what you need to spend, perhaps and there's been a lot of research around this, but they talk about the 4% withdrawal rule, saying that technically your portfolio should support, there's a lot of science behind it, a 4% annual withdrawal over the lifetime of your retirement. So if you think about it, I'll use simple math. If you needed $50,000 a year, and this doesn't include Social Security, which is a factor. It doesn't include the sale of your business, doesn't include passive income. And I'll get to why I'm saying those things. That would suggest you probably need if I did the math correctly off the top of my head, $2 million portfolio to safely generate $50,000 a year. And not be concerned about, hey, will I outlive my money? So I think what you have to though do is, it's not that simple of a calculation because there are a lot of factors and unknowns and market returns, et cetera. So good news is the industry has come a long way. You can go to Vanguard's website, you can go to Charles Schwab's website. There's a lot of free calculators out there, which I think a free calculator is probably an effective way to maybe kind of taking your pulse.
Yeah, a little bit.
But that gets you, I'd say, to the door. But this is where, I can make a pretty convincing argument and would encourage, most of us need to go get a physical every year with our physician.
Yeah.
It's
especially the older you get, right?
Especially the older you get. Well, and you need some of that more robust lab and blood work. Same as you need to make sure you go to the dentist. I was always taught twice a year. That may be a bit of a, I don't know, Gary, you might have more insight on that than me.
Yeah, no, it's still every 6 months. Every 6 months. I have to go every 4 months to get my teeth cleaned because I have issues. So I'm going about 3 times a year minimum.
Yeah, and what percentage of the American population currently sees a dentist versus those who don't? It's almost the same parallel to those that work with an advisor and those who don't.
I just read an article yesterday, 50%, and this was a poll of almost 1,400 people, 1,400 dental patients. 50% of people are not getting the dental treatment that they know that they need right now because of inflation. So this is like a real problem that people are facing. But let me ask you a second question that's similar to the first question that you just answered, because I think this is important for people to hear. So you gave us the benchmarks to look at if I don't have somebody helping me with my wealth management. Let's say that I do work with somebody. I work with like a traditional company. I've been working with them for 5 years. How do I know if I'm on track with them? How do I know if I'm winning with them? And you would say they're doing a good job. You should stay with them.
I had this conversation not too recently, actually. I mean, one of the things whenever we're introduced to someone, we go into curiosity mode and start asking a lot of questions. And, one of the questions I ask is, one, when was the last time you reviewed your whole balance sheet? And notice they use the term whole balance sheet, not just your personal balance sheet, not just the amount that's in your checking account and your investment account, but what about your business, the value of your business, the value of your, I'll call them alternative investments, such as real estate or even other outside private investments. When was the last time your advisor took a holistic picture to make sure the left hand and the right hand are talking to each other? That's usually question number one, right? Question number two was, when was the last time, or how frequently do you engage in a future scenario planning exercise where you're taking a look at the trajectory of your current assets, savings, expenses, and also factoring in their scenarios and contemplating scenarios such as, what would the sale of a practice in the case of a dentist? What would an early retirement versus a later retirement? Where are you having an active conversation? That's what we're looking for. I would suggest if someone's purely working with a money manager, hey, yeah, I've got a great advisor. What do they do? They handle all the investments. Great. What else do they do? No, they handle all the investments. Well, I think in that scenario, that's almost like saying, yeah, I've got a great hygienist. She covers the front 4 teeth. Well, fascinating.
There's a lot more there.
There's a lot more teeth there.
Yeah.
There's a lot more there. And here's what the interesting thing, the way the economics of our industry work is, typically you're going to pay an advisor who's managing the investments, and we'll call the industry standard is 1% on an annual basis. Big question is, what are you getting for that 1%?
So how does that, that was actually one of my questions. Like, how do you make money? So break that down for me. Like, pretend that I'm a dentist and I have, let's say I have $1 million in assets, and then I have a practice that's doing 2 practices that are each doing $1 million a year. Like, how do you then make money from that?
Yeah. So the way our firm is, we're a fee-only wealth management firm, meaning we charge and we start at 1% of the assets under management, and that's all we bill on. So, and that's on an annualized basis. So in effect, assuming things are static, which they're not, if you had $1 million, that would be $2,500 a quarter, $10,000 a year. We have the same aligned incentive that we want to see your assets grow. So therefore, you make money, we make more money. Your assets go down in value, your assets are worth less, our fees go down.
So your company, as the markets go up and down, if you're not putting the money in the right places, you guys are going to take a huge hit because the tides are going to go up or go down.
We're economically aligned to our clients.
Mm.
Now, this is probably the second level of that conversation, though, is notice I didn't say we're charging a separate planning fee. I mean, we have some minimums, so we'll park that for a second. But we don't have a separate planning fee for advising on the whole balance sheet. And this is where we differentiate ourselves to the marketplace, is we say, hey, for our 1% fee, not only are we going to help you with the investment aspects, but we're also going to be doing the wealth management, the planning, helping you take a look. And in our case, taking a deeper dive into, looking at your tax return, looking at your P&L, raising those questions. And ideally, Gary, also learning about great folks in the industry like you and others and saying, hey, it looks like you've got this issue. We need to help you touch base with this consultant or this person to optimize that piece. Because, and this is why we're so interested in all the different pieces of practice management, is how do we, if we can help a doctor optimize their business, and that's actually one of the questions I have for you, everybody wins.
Yep.
Doctor wins, patients win, business wins, and then if the business is doing well, we do better as well, because that means more net cash flow to be invested, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'll ask you one more question and I'll let you take the wheel here. What are your thoughts on Bitcoin?
Good question. So at its simplest form, I'm more interested in the technology, the blockchain technology.
It's really cool.
That's really cool. And I actually think it has, once it becomes, if you will, more regulated, may not be the right word, understood and integrated. Yeah. I think in the future, how many of us transfer funds now via mobile applications?
Yeah.
And I mean, this morning I was dropping my kids off at school. I was listening to the radio for a couple minutes, and they talked about Here in Charlotte, where we're located, Bank of America, everybody knows Zelle. There is a class action lawsuit around Zelle and unsecured transfer of funds, things like that. I think people are very interested in highly secure transfer of funds over a mobile platform. Blockchain the technology is critical. As to Bitcoin as a currency, there's a reason I think you're seeing it having the wild fluctuations because how do you know what it's actually worth? I realize there's a finite amount of Bitcoin in it, but it's how do who's making those prices? Who's regulating it? And, this might be a little bit of dated thinking, but I think it's true. I'd love to know how much of Bitcoin transactions or any crypto transactions are above the line legal reported transactions and how many are below the line, perhaps. And so if you've now got governments around the world, the United States is not the only government who is now interested in regulation and reporting, I think you're going to see pressure on some of these cryptocurrency, which, you saw the FTX just blew up, right?
Well, so here's an interesting thing. So I don't want to rabbit trail too hard, but I will a little bit here because I love this. So the guy that ran FTX, you want to know what he thought about it? Yeah, he got arrested. He hated Bitcoin. You want to know why? He couldn't manipulate it like he could those other cryptocurrencies. So a lot of those other cryptocurrencies weren't truly decentralized. Bitcoin, you can't get in there and manipulate the way he manipulated a lot of these other ones. And it went down. It definitely took a hit because of FTX, and it does go up and down. But I really like Bitcoin. So, anyways, I think that's interesting. Do you own any Bitcoin? Are you that interested in it? Or are you?
I do not.
Okay.
And clearly, I'll have to put the
not
famous
financial advice.
Here.
Not financial advice. Not financial advice.
I encourage everyone to do their own research, talk to their own advisors. I will say it's a growing trend that more and more people are interested in having a position in some type of a cryptocurrency.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's jump into marketing stuff. What questions? You had a lot of thought-provoking questions for me around marketing from your client's perspective. So let's jump into that.
Yeah, no, and appreciate you allowing me to turn the table here, Gary, because I'm curious. First and foremost, just a statement to lead into a question is, as we look into 2023, and one of the things that we're starting to see is people, you mentioned earlier, hygiene appointments are down because of inflation. Staff costs are going up. People are being, I think, more conscious of expenses, and it's always easier to grow top line revenue than it is sometimes to cut expenses, right? I shouldn't say it's easier. I think it's a better outcome long term if you grow. However, I'm curious to kind of think ahead to the dental and really not even dental, you could almost call this the marketing landscape for 2023. It's like, one, I'd love to know just your pulse. I did this earlier. What is your pulse on marketing spending heading into 2023? Do you see practices increasing, keeping consistent, or decreasing marketing spend heading into 2023?
So it depends, right? So here's an interesting thing. So during COVID, we worked with a lot of practices during COVID, and a lot of the offices that we worked with did really well. Like right after COVID, they shut down for a little bit, but they actually made up all of their losses that second part of the year. So in my head, I was like, oh, dentists did great. They recovered nicely. But then when I looked at the whole industry, there was a big part of the industry that actually got beat up pretty bad. And they didn't recover the way that some of the other clients. Yeah, go ahead.
So what, and this is, if you think about it, if you look ahead, what do the people that got it right and the people that want to get it right in 2023, what are the decisions they're making to get it right? And then also part two of that question is, where are people getting it wrong?
Yep. I'm gonna like, I'll actually dissect that. So these guys, so you have these two camps. So you have the people who actually recovered and did better after COVID. And then you have the ones that never actually recovered, and some still haven't recovered from that. And some offices even shut down or they had to sell. And what it boils down to is a couple things. So, and I'm gonna approach this as a marketer. So there's you could approach this from several different levels. If you stop marketing during a down economy, you are going to take it bad. It's going to hurt you really, really badly. Henry Ford said it best. He said, stopping marketing to save money is like trying to break your watch to save time. It doesn't work. And now here's where the nuances come in. You actually have to have marketing that works. So if you're investing into a broken marketing system, then you're going to be in big trouble. And this is why I believe that the marketer, 2023 is going to be the year of the marketer. I really, really believe that. And here's why. You have the economy's slowing down. People are spending less money. You have inflation that's still impacting people. Gas is still expensive. Food's still expensive. So people are spending less money. And that means your current patient base that you have, whatever that is, they're going to spend less with you. That's just the way that it's going to go in quarter one. You're also going to see that offices are going to begin to staff up more, because offices have been operating with below average staffing because there just hasn't been enough people to go around. That's changing right now because the economy is slowing down. People are looking to secure jobs. There's more people in the job market. So people have been laid off, all that kind of stuff. So there's going to be more people to hire. So you're going to have offices that are fully staffed. Patients are going to be spending less. So as an entrepreneur, what do you have to do? You have to say, turn on the marketing. And if you don't have a marketing system that's predictable, then you're going to be sitting there like guessing, should we invest? If you're asking these kind of questions, should we invest into social media? Should we invest into our reputation? Should we build a new website? You're 6 months to a year out from getting results. You need to be able to know, okay, I'm going to invest $10,000 into marketing. And that $10,000 is going to net me 100 new patients through the door. And I know that because my cost per acquisition is $100. I've already proved that out. And I'm very, very comfortable investing this money because it's predictable. That is what's going to make or break offices. And unfortunately, you don't have the time or the luxury to figure this out 4 or 5 months later. You should have had this figured out 3 months ago.
Well, let's assume for a second, on the heels of that, let's assume, I, Brett Miller, am a dental business owner, and probably I wouldn't say the majority, but many practices, I've never really had to market. I really haven't. Between word of mouth, relationships in the community, but now I'm interested in saying, all right, I'm going to allocate funds to market next year. What would be that practical next 2 to 3 steps? Once you decide to market, what are the next 2 or 3 steps, Gary, to focus, right? Because what I'm hearing is take a rifle approach, not a shotgun approach. Where do most people get that wrong?
Yeah. So first of all, if you've never marketed before and you're going to start marketing, it's not going to work. And here's why. Let's pretend that you own a car factory and you make gas-powered cars. And let's say it's, the Miller automobile, and you're making gas-powered cars. You got all the machines set up. You got everything set up. And then I come to you and I say, you're no longer doing gas-powered cars. I want you now to do electric cars.
You're not told to do that.
Yeah, you're not. You have to stop the assembly line. And you have to retrain every single step. Now, you're still making cars. And correct. From the outside, we're going to go, I don't expect the cars to be late. I expect the cars to still be beautiful. I expect them to run properly. The only difference is, in my head as a consumer, is you went from gas to electric. Big deal. I still want what I want when I want it, right? That is the equivalent of going from a no marketing practice to a marketing practice. It literally impacts every single part of your business. And if you go into it and you act like it doesn't, you're going to fail and it's going to be painful, and you will blame the marketing company. You will say, "No, they just don't know how to send us the right people," but that may or may not be true too, right? There's some of that.
What percentages of practices would you say move ahead with marketing without defining the steps to create a successful outcome?
Oh, it has to be at least half of them, because a lot of people are in this position right now. So they haven't marketed and now they want to market. So what you have to do is actually, it's counterintuitive. You have to actually work with somebody that helps you with the operational side first, because when your office is all patient referrals and doctor referrals, you don't need to answer your phone. You don't need to be trained on the phone. You don't need to open up a ton of new appointments. People will wait weeks. You don't need to train your treatment coordinator. You don't need to train how to recare. That all just happens because you're just there serving them. But what happens when you start sending marketing patients in, they don't trust you. The doctors call them shopping patients. We don't want the shopping patients. All patients are shopping patients. It's just how far down in the funnel, the trust funnel they are. And so if you're getting these marketing patients, they have money, they have a dental need, and you're using that old system, and the average dental unanswered rate right now is 35%. 35% of calls go unanswered during normal business hours at dental offices. That's the average. The bad offices, the ones that don't market, things like that, like they don't, when I say bad, they're even worse than that. They're at the 40, 50%. And it doesn't matter because, again, if a patient referral was referred there, you're gonna answer the phone. They're gonna call back. Like, it doesn't matter if you answer the phone the first time. So,
but if it's inbound.
Yeah, exactly. So my recommendation is first find, and I work with a bunch of people that do this. You need to operationally have a vision of what you want to do. What you were talking about earlier, like, where are you trying to go? If you're just trying to save your bacon and throw marketing at the wall, my recommendation is it's too late. Like you've sat on the sideline too long. You don't just go to the marketing. Go to the operations first. Get a clear vision of where you're trying to go. Are you trying to add more practices? Are you trying just to grow this practice? And then where are you operationally weak? And have an honest evaluation of that. And then once you have a clear understanding of that, then add marketing on top of that. And the reason I say this, because I sell marketing, right? So the reason I say this is you're just setting yourself up for failure. Like if you put marketing on top of broken operations, you'll never be successful.
So let me ask you this. As part of your client qualification or prospect qualification and onboarding process, describe for me how you're analyzing those pieces. You know, if someone comes and says, "Hey, Gary, I'd like your help with marketing," I presume you're not jumping straight to the marketing.
No, we walk. No, exactly. So first thing we do is we say, okay, well, what does success look like for you? So, we're at 50 new patients. We want to get to 100. Great. What kind of patients do you want? Clinically, like what kind of patients do you want? Just bread and butter. Okay, so you want some GP patients. You're looking for, what's your avatar look like? What's your average unanswered call rate? What's your phone conversion rate? What's your average time to appointment? What's your available appointment blocks look like? What's your...
How many people can answer those questions?
Some people can answer some of them. So but that tells us where they're broken, right? So everybody's broken somewhere. Every business is broken somewhere at some level because you're always working on it. So if you're hearing this and you're like, why is Gary beating me up so bad? Every business is broken at some level, right? It's just where is it broken? And so, but I will say, it's a big jump to go from no marketing to marketing. That's a big jump. You have to actually start a little bit back before that. So then at that point, that's when we go, you know what? We don't think you're not going to be able to be successful with what we have for you unless you're willing to do A, B, and C. And if they're like, and I meet a lot of dentists, they're like, I'm not willing to have my front desk trained. I'm not willing to make my front desk do this, that, or the other. I'm not willing to open up more appointments on my schedule, or I'm not willing to hire another hygienist to be able to get these hygiene patients in, which I get. Like that is a business owner's choice and they're right. But it's not as simple as just let's throw marketing at it to fix it. Marketing is not a silver bullet. it can be a silver bullet, but only if you have really clean operations. When you have great operations, then marketing's the best thing in the world. But when you have broken operations, all it does is exaggerates the problems that you already have.
So if I'm hearing what you're saying, it almost sounds like if you're interested in enhancing your marketing activities, perhaps a first step is to evaluate your current operations to almost assess whether you're a good candidate. And as a business owner, will this investment of funds in marketing operations or marketing activities be fruitful based on our operations, or do we need to do we need to get the engine fixed first before we take it out to learn how to drive the course?
Now a lot of doctors have marketed before, and a lot of them have had mixed feelings about it, right? Which I understand.
Right.
And there's a reason for that. Number one, it's either the marketing company they're working with doesn't know what they're doing, or they're not dental specific, or they don't know how to drill down operationally to get the kind of clinical patients. They don't know the difference between a prophy patient and an Invisalign patient, as an example. Like, that's a problem. That's like there's nuances there. Then from there, it's okay, let's assume that the marketing that they do have does work. They do know what they're doing. Then you have these pitfalls. I call it the black hole of marketing. So if you're spending, I'm just going to use round numbers. If you're spending $10,000 on marketing, $3,500 goes down the drain on unanswered calls. That's the average. And then from there, the average conversion on the phone for marketing leads, this is average. And keep in mind, this is average for people who track it. So this is the people who don't track it is probably worse. 50% is the average conversion rate. So if you get $10,000, $3,500 goes down the drain. So we're at $6,500, and then 50% of that, so about $3,000. We're at about $3,000 down the drain before they even get to the office.
Sounds like it puts a lot of pressure on the effectiveness of your marketing spend, which is probably why most people have mixed results.
It's 100% why. That's why. And a lot of people hear this and they're like, "Are you just defending marketing companies across the world?" Yeah. No, but even the best marketing is still a failure with those numbers.
So let me ask you one or two more questions, and then I know we'll use that as a good opportunity. But what would you say, Gary, is in this vein? What's that key marketing activity that usually everybody loves to talk about? Hey, this is going to really move the needle. But from your standpoint, you're like, yeah, that doesn't. Everybody loves to talk about it, but that really doesn't move the needle.
Yeah. So dentists are tricky because they're very analytical, but they love branding. So dentists really love to focus, I get all these ideas. They're like, let's put our name on the back of this little league shirt, and we're going to do all the little leagues, and that stuff's awesome. I think it's great that you want to do that, but you have to understand that there's a difference between branding and lead generation. When you focus on your brand, you can't measure the ROI. So for me, I create all these Instagram videos. I create tons of them, and they're on TikTok, and I get followers, but there's no direct correlation between those and my business growing. Zero. And I can't measure it. I can only measure the eyeballs and the feeling and the feedback that I get from people. So it's like, I see your videos, Gary, I love them. Or we see your videos, we don't love you. You know what I mean? Whatever the feeling,
Right.
is, there's not a direct I can't go into my business and go, okay, I posted 375 videos in the last quarter, and that meant, and our revenue went up by 10%, and that's because of those videos. It's not possible. That's branding. Lead generation, which is what we offer as a company, is measurable from the click all the way through to them buying treatment. And we can measure all of that. So we go in and we look, okay, you put $1,000 in, that $1,000 produced 10 patients, and those 10 patients all bought $1,000 worth of treatment. So you produced you got a 10-to-1 ROI on your investment. And then we even go a step further. We actually look at if they're recarrying those patients. So we can see from the marketing, what is your recare rate of your marketing patients, which is a whole nother can of worms that we could jump into. But that's how we look at it.
So let me turn the question on its head, and this will be my final question is, so what then, if we talked about what's often flash, and you said branding that may not be effective, what's that under the radar if you were to say, hey, focus on this one thing, it's not often talked about, but this is really what moves the needle.
So have you ever watched Shark Tank before?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All entrepreneurs love Shark Tank, right?
Yep.
Shark Tank comes on, you do your business pitch, and one of the first questions they almost always ask is, what's your cost to acquire a customer? And the reason they're asking that is like, great, you have a business. That's wonderful. But we're going to buy you, or we're going to invest into you, and we want to grow you. And the only way you can really know how to grow predictably in the business world is if you know how much it is to acquire a customer, because then you can reverse engineer, okay, if I invest $1 million into this company, they can put that towards generating new customers, and they're going to go from this to this, right?
Yep.
That's what they're doing, and that's why they always do that. That's basic business 101. Well, guess what we don't do in the dental industry? We don't put an emphasis on that. Most people do not know what the cost to acquire a patient is. And to your point earlier, it's like, well, we just get a bunch of patient referrals, right? And then so it's free, but that's not scalable. So when you go to open up your second office, you're like, yeah, we're just going to get a bunch of patient referrals, and it doesn't happen. Or you hire a new associate. I just talked to an associate. I just did a podcast with an associate. He said, I got hired at an office. They didn't have enough patients for me. Got hired in another office. They didn't have enough patients for me. The reason why is that they didn't know what their cost to acquire a customer was, because they didn't have marketing systems set up. So you have to have that. And here's the wrong way to do it, because everybody does it the wrong way the first time. They take their total new patients divided by their marketing budget. That is wrong. And here's why. If you have a healthy office, half of your patients should be from patient referrals, half roughly. It could be 60-40, 35-70, whatever. But in that ballpark, 50-50, in the ballpark, half should be from marketing, half should be from patient referrals. When you get to that point, you want to take your marketing budget divided by just your marketing patients, not your patient referrals, because your patient referrals, you can't take marketing dollars and get your patient referrals to go up. It's an operational number. Operations dictates how many patient referrals you're going to get, not how many marketing patients you're going to get. So you want a clear number on that.
All right. You've given me something really good to go back and start asking now. I appreciate that, because that's oftentimes when we're having conversations, we see the top line marketing expense. Like that's a clear line item in a profit and loss statement. But I've not before, and I appreciate you're giving me a good takeaway here, asking, all right, what was the yield of new marketing patients from this spend?
Yep. And if they apply 100% of it to all of their new patients to it, then you know instantly they don't know. And here's the honest truth. And I've talked to DSOs with hundreds of practices. This is a rampant problem, and we've solved this, but most people haven't, because it's very complicated. Most people do not know where their patients are coming from. Dental is very good at bottom line analytics, meaning they know how many new patients they got and they know how much treatment they've bought. And then you can splice that a billion different ways. But top of funnel, dental is horrible. They don't know where these patients are coming from. They're trying to attribute value and where they came from, but it's very, very tricky. And 99.9% of people out there don't understand that part of it, and they just don't have a clear idea of where people are actually coming from.
Well, let's use this as an opportunity to grow awareness. Start asking that question.
100%. Yeah. And here's how you ask it. Who can we thank for referring you to our office? That's the best way to ask it. Because if you say, where did you find us? What is everybody going to say? Google. Well, because of course, if I refer a patient, if I'm a doctor and I refer a patient, they're going to go to Google. If I'm a patient and I refer a patient, they're going to go to Google. If I'm marketing and I'm going to find you, I'm going to go to Google. Your website in Google is not accurate if you ask the question that way. So the correct way to ask the question is, who can I thank for referring you? If they were referred by a doctor or a patient, then they will tell you that. And then if they came from Google, they're going to go, oh, no one referred me. I found you online. And now you know, okay, that's attributed to my marketing.
That's a marketing spend. Fascinating. Gary, this has been great. I'm sure we could sit here and chat all afternoon, but I really appreciate the time and the insight and the wisdom.
Absolutely. This has been a great episode. I love this stuff. And thanks so much for coming on today.